A brand new socialist mayor just learned the hard way that campaign slogans do not override the United States Constitution. Zohran Mamdani walked into City Hall promising a revolution, only to face plant into a brick wall of legal reality before he even unpacked his boxes. If you want to understand the economic reality behind the political headlines, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Tax Hack Pro right now. We cut through the noise to bring you the financial truths that the mainstream media refuses to touch. It is honestly one of the fastest political crash and burn moments we have ever witnessed. Zohran Mamdani, a 34-year-old card-carrying Democratic socialist, recently became New York City's 112th mayor. He ran on a platform that sounded like a utopian dream to his supporters. He promised free everything. He promised government control of housing. He promised to fundamentally alter the economic fabric of the world's financial capital. But here is what nobody expected. The entire agenda exploded in his face in less than 2 weeks. A federal bankruptcy judge looked at his plan to effectively seize private property and shut it down immediately. There was no negotiation. There was no compromise. It was a complete and total rejection of his strategy. But the details of this story are even wilder than the headline suggests. The mayor tried to block a real estate company from purchasing distressed assets. And the irony is thick because Mamdani has built his career on criticizing Israel, yet he was completely outmaneuvered in his own city by Summit Properties, an Israeli business group that clearly understands American bankruptcy law far better than the mayor does. You simply cannot make this up. To understand why this happened, we have to look at the housing crisis that nobody wants to explain honestly. There is a company called Pinnacle that owns about 5,100 rent-stabilized apartments across New York City. They went bankrupt with $500 million in debt. Now, let's be real about the condition of these buildings. They are nightmares. We are talking about sewage backups, no heat in the winter, pest infestations, wires hanging out of walls, and ceilings literally collapsing on tenants. Mamdani showed up with cameras rolling, looking like the hero who was about to save the day. It was great optics. He looked like he was fighting for the people, but nobody in the media is asking the obvious question. Why are these buildings in such terrible shape to begin with? Here is the answer that destroys the socialist narrative and explains the economics of the situation. New York City's rent stabilization laws make it mathematically impossible for many landlords to maintain their buildings. It is illegal for them to charge what it actually costs to fix a boiler or repair a roof. You cannot raise rent enough to cover the cost of repairs, insurance, and taxes. So what happens? Landlords stop maintaining the buildings because they literally cannot afford to do so. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It is basic math. If you cap the money coming in while the costs of labor and materials go up, eventually you run out of money. The buildings fall apart, the tenants suffer, and then politicians blame the landlords for the mess that the policies created. The kicker here is that Mamdani's entire platform is built on making these rent control policies even stricter. He is literally promising to double down on the exact mechanism that caused this disaster in the first place. When the mayor tried to play dictator, reality hit back hard. Summit Properties put in a bid to buy all these buildings out of bankruptcy for $451 million. They followed all the rules. They won the auction fair and square. Mamdani immediately announced that New York City would intervene to block the sale. His excuse was that Pinnacle owed the city about $12.7 million in unpaid fines. On the surface, that might sound reasonable. The city wants its money, but anyone who understands finance knows what was really happening. Mamdani did not care about the fines. He wanted to stop Summit from buying the buildings so that the city government could take them over or hand them off to a nonprofit that aligned with his ideology. This was his proof of concept. If he could use unpaid fines to override a federal bankruptcy proceeding and dictate who owns property in New York, he would have a blueprint for seizing property everywhere. Think about how dangerous that precedent would be. We aren't talking about criminal asset forfeiture. We are talking about municipal fines being used as a weapon to transfer ownership of private property to the state. This is Venezuela-style socialism, dressed up in American legal language. Fortunately for property rights, federal judge David Jones looked at Mamdani's request and told him to get lost. He denied the delay. He allowed the sale to proceed immediately. Summit Properties got the buildings. Private property remained private. This is a critical lesson in how the American system works. A socialist mayor tried to seize private property using government power, and a federal judge shut him down to protect the rule of law. The fact that this confrontation even had to happen is concerning, but the outcome proves that checks and balances still exist. If you appreciate deep dives into how politics affects your wallet and the economy, you need to subscribe to Tax Hack Pro. We break down these complex stories so you can see the bigger picture. Let's look at what Mamdani campaigned on and why these promises are mathematically destined to fail. He promised to freeze rents for 1 million households. As we have seen with Pinnacle, that leads to disrepair and bankruptcy. He promised free citywide childcare. That is a noble goal, but where does the money come from when high earners are fleeing the city? He promised to eliminate bus fares, but who pays for the drivers, the fuel, and the maintenance? Forcing negligent landlords to sell their property for unpaid fines sounds like justice to some, but it is an assault on property rights. Every single one of these promises hits the hard wall of American law. The Constitution protects property. The courts will not rewrite bankruptcy laws just to suit the whims of a socialist mayor. While Mamdani is taking losses in federal court, he is facing another rebellion closer to home. Staten Island Republicans are pushing harder than ever to secede from New York City. We are talking about 500,000 people breaking away to form their own independent jurisdiction. 65% of Staten Island voted for secession back in 1993, and the movement is more alive now than ever. It is entirely possible. Look at St. George, Louisiana, which successfully broke away to form its own city. Staten Island voted overwhelmingly against Mamdani. The local GOP leaders say that independence is the only option left to protect their tax dollars and their way of life. This creates the perfect storm of political destruction for the new mayor. He is getting hit from both sides. On one side, you have Staten Island Republicans who opposed him from the start. But increasingly, he will face backlash from his own supporters who are realizing he cannot deliver what he promised. He can't freeze rents because the courts won't let him. He can't seize property because federal law won't allow it. He can't provide free everything because the money simply doesn't exist. So what happens when your opponents already hate you and your supporters realize you lied to them? Your political coalition falls apart. Some disillusioned supporters will check out of politics entirely, but others will be looking for alternatives. And when candidates show up offering practical solutions instead of impossible promises, a lot of those voters are going to listen. This isn't just about one mayor. This is about what happens every time socialist ideology confronts American constitutional reality. Progressive candidates can win elections in deep blue cities by promising free everything and government control of housing. They can demonize landlords and wealthy people to get votes, but then they take office and try to implement these policies, and they run into a fundamental problem. The American legal system was specifically designed to prevent exactly what they are trying to do. The founders understood that private property rights are the foundation of a free society. They built protections into our constitutional framework. They made sure no single person could accumulate enough power to override property rights on a whim. This is why socialism keeps failing in America. Not because the ideas aren't popular on social media, but because our entire legal system is built to stop it. Mamdani can campaign on seizing property. He can promise to freeze rents. He can win elections on these promises. But he cannot actually do any of it because federal judges will stop him. Mamdani has at least 4 more years in office. That is a long time to be a mayor who cannot implement any of his signature policies. His credibility is shot. 2 weeks into his term, his biggest campaign promise got destroyed in court. How is he supposed to come back from that? The Staten Island secession movement will keep growing. Primary challengers are already circling. Republicans will run ads about this failure for years. And most importantly, this will be held up as proof that socialist policies do not work in America. Rent control feels compassionate. It feels like you are protecting tenants from greedy landlords, but economics does not care about feelings. When you cap rents below market rates, you destroy the incentive to build new housing. Housing supply decreases. When you cap rents on existing buildings, landlords stop doing maintenance because they cannot afford it. Buildings deteriorate. The people who benefit most from rent control are the ones who are lucky enough to already have a rent-controlled apartment. Everyone else fights over increasingly scarce housing. This isn't a right-wing talking point. This is standard economics that even left-leaning economists agree with. Rent control does not work. But socialist politicians keep promising it anyway because it sounds good in a speech. New York City isn't isolated. It is a preview of what happens when socialist policies meet American reality. San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland. They are all implementing progressive governance, and they are all dealing with rising crime, homelessness, failing schools, businesses leaving, and families fleeing. The policies do not work. They sound good, they feel compassionate, but in practice, they make things worse. Mamdani's failure is just the latest example. If you cannot implement socialist policies in New York City with a progressive mayor and a sympathetic city council, where can you implement them? The fact that Judge Jones shut down Mamdani's property seizure is actually hopeful. It means the system still works. Constitutional limits still matter. Private property rights still mean something. The founders built safeguards specifically to prevent government overreach. Those safeguards are still working, and if you want to stay informed about these battles, you need to subscribe to Tax Hack Pro right now. We are tracking this story as it unfolds and helping people understand what is really happening in the American economy. The fight for freedom and economic sanity doesn't end with one court case. It is an ongoing battle that requires constant vigilance. Mamdani will keep trying to implement his socialist agenda. Other progressive politicians will make similar attempts. We need to keep calling it out and defending constitutional principles. Judge Jones drew a line in the sand. Now we need to make sure that line holds. This was a massive wake-up call for the new administration. They thought they could rule by decree. They thought they could ignore the rights of creditors and property owners. They were wrong. The repercussions of this ruling will be felt for the rest of Mamdani's term. Every time he tries to overstep his authority, opponents will point to this case. Every time he promises a radical new policy, people will ask if it is even legal. The aura of inevitability that surrounded his campaign has been shattered. He is not a revolutionary leader reshaping the city. He is just a politician who doesn't understand the law. And for the taxpayers of New York, this is a mixed bag. On one hand, it is good that the mayor was stopped from seizing private property. On the other hand, the city is still facing massive financial challenges. The tax base is eroding as high earners move to Florida and Texas. The cost of services is rising, and the leadership in City Hall seems more interested in ideological battles than in solving practical problems. The Pinnacle Group bankruptcy is a tragedy for the tenants who have lived in squalor. But the solution isn't government seizure. The solution is a housing market that actually functions, a market where landlords have the incentive to maintain their properties, a market where new supply can be built to meet demand, a market where competition keeps prices in check, rather than government price controls that lead to shortages and decay. We will continue to watch this situation closely. The battle for the future of New York City is just beginning. Will it remain the financial capital of the world? Or will it succumb to the same economic delusions that have destroyed other great cities? The answer depends on whether the rule of law can withstand the pressure of radical ideology. If you found this breakdown helpful, please share it. And remember to subscribe to Tax Hack Pro for more analysis on the intersection of politics, law, and your money. We are here to help you navigate these turbulent times. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next update.